Okay, observations in family daycare. Now, this is one of the things that I deal with all the time with you guys in family daycare. There are challenges. You are the only person there. It's not like in a centre-based service where they get released for their time, and there's a whole range of other contingencies in place in a long daycare service or a centre-based service than there are in family daycare. So this is my take, and this is how I think it would work easier for you. So, again, with all of my information, do with it what you will. But when there was a change in 2019 where we came from the old accreditation system and we moved into the standard system, and so many things were thrown out. So if you've ever heard that old saying, throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. So we got rid of so much, but there were in those previous days, pre the national quality standards, there were some really good practices that gave us a really good indication as educators as to where children were developmentally. And I think that we've lost some of that. And I think that if we reflect back on those older ways or those strategies prior to the standards, there's a lot of good in there that we can still be using. So this is how I look at it, and I've done it this way. And I was an early childhood practitioner for many, many years, and I was very successful in that role as other roles. But when a child came to me, regardless of long daycare or not, when a child came to me, one of the first things that I would do a milestone checklist. And it's not about measuring children, and it's not about being inequitable. It's not about that. It's about having a look at that child and where that child is developmentally. Now, we all know that humans develop at certain rates and maturation goes at certain periods, and just is the way of the world. It is the way that humans operate. So by having a checklist when they first come to you as educators, that gives you an idea of where they are developmentally. It gives you an indication of whether there is something that you need to address, or whether there is something that maybe they're really advanced and you need to cater for that also. So there's the ebbs and the flows of where children are developmentally. So the first thing I would do when children arrive in your care is I would do a checklist. So I would do a milestone checklist of where they are developmentally. Now, I'm going to put some links here. I'll find some good ones for you. So with the checklist, it will tell you where they are physically, emotionally, socially, where they should be for their age. That doesn't mean that's not the be-all and end-all, and you cannot use a checklist in isolation. There is no doubt about that. That's not even a debate. It's not about using a checklist in isolation. So by having a checklist, though, you get an idea of where that child is, where they should be, and if they're not there, what you can do. If they have surpassed that as far as developmental ages and those sorts of things go, then it still gives you an idea of what you can be doing for them in their educational program. The other thing that I think, now, before I move on from checklists, the younger the child, for me, the younger the child, the more frequent the checklist. So if you've got a child that's come to you under 3, then I would probably be doing, so let's say under 3, I would probably be doing checklists probably every 6 months, I would think. If they're over 3, then probably every 12 months. Now, if you've got before and after school care children, the teachers would be doing a whole range of things at school, so that there's probably less expectation on you to worry about where that is. So I would be doing those once every 12 months maybe, and then maybe even less. It really does depend on the child. So before and after school care, 12 months. And that will just give you an idea of where they are developmentally, whether or not you need to assist or provide additional or whatever that is. Okay, so that's checklist. I think that you should do this upon enrolment for each child, regardless of the age group. You do it upon enrolment, and then whatever that looks like afterwards. I also believe that anecdotal records are the way to go. And I believe that more with family daycare, because you are by yourself and you are operating this education and care service often without any support at all for many of you. So by taking anecdotal records, you're getting a snippet of everything that's happening, and how that child is, and what they're engaged in. So you might gather, well, I don't know, you've got one full-time child, let's say, who's in Monday to Friday, 8 till 5. That would be a full-time position as far as I'm aware, as far as I'm concerned. So you might have, over that week, you might have 12 anecdotal records that have taken you a really small amount of time to do. So they're your 12 anecdotal records. Now, the value of this, in my opinion, now this is all my opinion, the value of anecdotal records is it gives you an opportunity to, for me, anecdotal records are like taking a short photograph, if that makes any sense. So these anecdotal records, you reflect back on those over that week or fortnight, whatever your planning cycle is, and you will see threads come out. You will see where your anecdotal records are either gathering the right information or whether they're just missing information. And you know what? As educators, it took me probably 2 years as a practitioner to really get my anecdotal information right and to get my reflections right. And mind you, I started in a time when we weren't really reflecting on our educational program. We were doing theme-based and hey, there's good things to themes and there's bad things to themes. So we'll talk about that at another day. But your anecdotal information upon reflection, for me, is invaluable. So I think that when you gather the right anecdotal information, the more you do, the more you'll get better at this. So I know there are a lot of family daycare services out there that saying, you need to have one piece of documentation per month per child, or for me, that's truly not enough. That does not meet the Act. The Act states that you have to have a range of documentation that shows children's interests, needs and abilities. So a little bit more than that, but so I would be doing a range of anecdotal information. Now, taking anecdotal information is as simple as wearing, like today I've got pants on. Today I would have, I would always have a pen, whether that pen be in my top or whatever. So I would have a pen and a sticky note. I would write down what, so let's use my daughter as the example. So her name is Eloise. So I would say Eloise, I would use just E. I don't have the time to write Eloise. I know who Eloise is. Now, if I've got 2 E's, then I would write ES so that I know that who that child is. So ES is completed an 8-piece puzzle. Was engaged. So what I'm writing down is the fact. So, and then tomorrow we might have ES asked for an additional puzzle. Now, the day after that, we might go ES stayed at the water activity for 10 minutes. And you might put down what ES was doing and whatever else. So when it comes time to reflect on each of these, we can now start to see a pattern emerging in ES's interests, her abilities, whether that be her language or her her patience or her engagement or her ability or her whether she uses her left hand or her right hand, or so this information will completely over the course of the fortnight, the month, the year even, this will give us a very clear indication of this ES's interests, skills and abilities. So this is one way, and it's easier for you. Now, you don't need to rewrite those post-it notes. Those post-it notes, however you use those within that child's educational program, make sure you just stick them so that they're secure. So what I would do, I would get either a folder or a scrapbook or something like that, and I would stick those range, these anecdotal information that I've gathered over the course of the time, and I would stick that in there. And then that is where you sit back over the fortnight or week, and that's where you reflect on that. And then what do your reflections tell you? So, okay, we know that ES can complete an 8-piece puzzle. We know that she's interested in puzzles because she's asked for more puzzles, and we know that she really likes water play. So what can we do for ES moving forward? What are the kind of things that we can do that? So there is some kind of problem solving here that she likes. There is some kind of sensory here that she likes. So let's follow that forward for that child and see where they sit with that. Now, one of the other things that I want to be really mindful about informing you are templates. Now, in family daycare, I have never seen so many planning templates than I have in family daycare. And as you all know by now, I've done all types of service types. For me, this is how I look at it, and I want you to really consider this, whether you're an educator or whether you're a service provider. Think back to when you were at school. Think back to when a teacher asked you a question. So the teacher asks the question, whatever that question is, and then they give you this much space to provide your response. Think about when you did your Certificate 3 or when you did your diploma, high school, whatever, same. What did you do? As humans, what we do, we tend to fill this space. Now, if you get asked another question, but your space is this big, what do? You do one of two things. You either write bigger or you put more information. True or not true? So in my theory, in my belief, I believe that templates are stifling as far as developing an educational program for children. These are not giving you as an educator or your educators, this does not give you creativity. This does not give you reflection. This does not give you anything to keep moving forward or to think about or to ponder, or it doesn't give you that ability if you're working in this much space. My advice, get rid of templates. That's always my advice. Get rid of squares at least. Get rid of squares at least. Yes, we've got our overarching questions. What are our overarching questions? We've got to achieve the 5 outcomes. True or not true? So we've got to look at how are we achieving the outcomes. If you look at the Education and Care Act, it will tell you what are the requirements for an education and care program. If by yourself, because educators in family daycare are predominantly alone, this is one of the strategies that I use in order to meet these obligations, in order to meet the Act's obligations, in order to meet the education and care law and regulations, I should say. So in order to meet all of those education and care regulations, this is how I recommend you do an educational program. And this is your reflections. And herein lies the key. So your record keeping, and there's a whole range of records that you can be keeping. You can be keeping running records and the stories or whatever. There's a whole range of records you can keep. I recommend do a checklist when they first start and do that periodically, depending on the age of the child, and do a range, do more rather than less anecdotal records. If you are doing group observations, which you should be doing, then your group observations can also be anecdotal and your group observations can also be within a story. So one of the two, you can do whatever works for you. Just, we all know that in family daycare though, you are time poor because you are by yourself and you do not want to finish work at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, whatever that is, when that should be time for your family, your children, your partner, your friends, your life, whatever that is. You do not want to be sitting down writing records and writing educational programs. It really should be, as best as we can, as most as we can, we should be writing this as part of our business, as part of our operation. This should be part of our work. We don't want to be bringing this work home. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. So this is my goal to, I am going to put some examples here around what an anecdotal record is and how you can get the best out of an anecdotal record. I'll also put some information here about reflections and how you can use and you know, build your skills upon reflective practice. So we'll have a look at that, and I think you will find that you will get an authentic educational program. You will be able to meet the children's needs, interests, strengths and abilities. You will be able to meet the education and care legislation, and you will also be able to do this in a timely manner that suits you. There's always going to be some homework, there's no doubt about that, but this will hopefully take some pressure off you guys. So let me know if you've got any questions. As always, I've got some links in the bottom here, so hopefully I'll hear from you. Let me know how you go. Take it easy. See ya. Bye.